Hey there friends, Russell with Live 30A. I hope all of you are doing exceptionally well. Before I get into all the data of everything, I realize that in the past, things that we've put out have been very data oriented, and I know that's what most people are looking for, because when it comes to real estate, you want to make informed decisions. But I think it's important to know the person behind a lot of these things. Any industry, honestly, it's a people business. So I want to introduce myself a little bit more, but I want to touch on some really sensitive things that have been lingering over the past few months, and there's a lot of confusion, a lot of questions over, particularly in the 30A area. I'm actually going to put a timestamp right here. I'm not sure what it'll be yet, but if you want to skip a little of this preface and just get straight to like the market update and some other information that I'm going to be providing, you can just skip ahead to this part of the video. Some of the things I want to talk about today is obviously, first and foremost, what is the 30A market doing? I haven't put out an update video in a couple of months, and it's been a quiet summer, but there's a lot of information to digest there, so we're going to be covering that. I'm also going to be covering a very hot topic when it comes to the 30A area, and that is our private beach situation. So as many of you may or may not know, maybe you've experienced as you come down to visit, we now have private beach ownership, which obviously plays a heavy hand in real estate, and it's going to be interesting to see how that pans out in the future. So we'll cover that a little bit later in the video. And then lastly, and probably most importantly, I want to touch on the key points of the NAR settlement. So I'm sure if you're at least a little privy to the real estate world, you know that there was a massive NAR, National Association of Realtors settlement. It has not been fully finalized, but it has been preliminary acceptance to the conditions of the settlement. So I'll be going over that as well, because if you're not familiar with that, the face of how real estate transactions are done is going to change dramatically on paper, but very little in real world application, and certainly to the effect of buyers and sellers. But we'll get into all that a little bit more later. Before I get into all that though, I just like to say that it's a beautiful day right now. I am currently at North Beach Social, right here at the foot of the 331 bridge. If you're ever coming down to 30A, you probably cross this bridge. And I'm at North Beach Social. Upstairs is Farm and Fire, across the street is the Bay. And this is one of my favorite local spots, 100%, to come and work outside of a coffee shop. This place is very unique in that regard. It's obviously right on the bay. I don't know if you can hear the waves on the mic here, but got myself my rice bowl and a cold beer. It is currently 91 degrees, but tonight's supposed to get down to 74. And I am one of, I don't know, maybe 6 people here right now, which is really, really nice. But if you haven't been here yet, I highly recommend come check it out. It's kind of hard because it's just following me, but it's this whole beach, outdoor beach area. Let the kiddos run around, great food, great drinks, open bar outside, indoor AC, a little quieter if you want that. Kind of checks all the boxes. So thank you, North Beach Social. Thank you, Chef Jim Shirley, for creating a place like this for me to come get some work done and enjoy this beautiful place. Because in all honesty, this is why people come here. This is why people visit. This is why people move here full time, so that they can do exactly what I'm doing right now. This is the rice bowl, which, I mean, I haven't had anything bad off of this menu. Chef Jim Shirley does a great job of putting the other menus, but coconut rice, a little guac, some blackened chicken, but you can get mahi, shrimp, a handful of other things, some fresh slaw, black beans. This is a delicious dish, nice and light on a hot day. The trick is to get a little bit of everything in the bite. We're gonna do our best here. Cheers. That's so good. That coconut rice, beautiful. Before we get into the nitty-gritty of everything, while I'm nice and relaxed and hanging out in this beautiful location, introduce myself a little bit more. So my name's Russell. I am a realtor with Live 30A Real Estate. We are, to my knowledge, the only Christ-centered brokerage in the 30A area. We donate 25% of all of our brokerage profits to active missions, both locally and across seas, particularly in Nicaragua. We do quarterly missions. We partner with local charities in the area to either supplement or volunteer, whatever we can do to functionally help, not just cut a check. We do like to cut checks, but that's not our primary focus. We want to be as hands-on as possible. So that's our brokerage in a nutshell. I have had my license since April of 2021, so I am in my third, almost 4th year of real estate. My background is an entrepreneur. My wife and I own a company out here where we create content very similar to this, but not specifically to real estate. And my background professionally is multifaceted. Obviously, I own another business in addition to my real estate business, but also in New Orleans, where we came from. I used to own a marketing company, video marketing company, started out doing wedding videos for a few years, then got into the commercial space and eventually consulting, and was able to travel around the country. Very long story short, found myself kind of niched in the real estate marketing world, and started helping other brokerages around the country kind of develop and flush out their content to engage with their audience and their market, just like I'm doing right now with you guys. So that segued into me getting my own license, and now I do this for myself. One of the advantages of that, obviously, is I'm very comfortable with video. Maybe you noticed. I use professional equipment. I am not shy about being on camera at all. I look how I look, I sound how I sound. My opinions are what they are. You can take it or leave it, and that's okay with me. I appreciate the honesty. I would expect the same from anyone else. That's what I'd hope from anybody else. So that being said, that plays very heavily, particularly into real estate in the 30A area, because we have a lot of out-of-state buyers, investors, owners, and we are able to be boots on the ground. If you look at the Google reviews that I have for my previous clients for Live 30A, video is a very common thing that comes up. I love doing video walkthroughs, giving my honest opinions. I want anyone to be able to feel what, as close as possible, what it feels like to the experience of being in a home or an area or a neighborhood, the lifestyle. I mean, literally what I'm doing today. I'm working right now, but I'm doing it, bayside, listening to the waves, and it's not as cool as I'd like it to be, but it is cooler than it's been for the last couple of months for sure. So, all that being said, that's kind of me in a nutshell. My experience with real estate has been incredible. I was so averse to becoming a real estate agent because I thought it was just contracts and legal jargon and all the overwhelming stuff that I didn't like enduring during my real estate buying process. But being the facilitator of it, and more importantly, learning people, every transaction is unique. It's been such a beautiful experience and far more rewarding than I ever thought it would be. I kick myself for kicking and screaming to do this sooner. I should have. But everything's divine timing, and I'm here now to be able to help whoever's watching this. If this is something that's valuable to you and the information that I provide is valuable to you, then I'm doing my job, and that's what I want. I strive to provide clarity. This is real estate is often overwhelming for most people. It was certainly overwhelming for me before I ever had my license and I bought, my first house. So I fully appreciate how many questions come up that you don't know. I don't know what I don't know. And that is one of the biggest values, in my opinion, of working with a professional real estate agent, in particular a realtor. If you're not familiar with the difference, it's really not that big of a difference. It's honestly a title you buy into. However, realtors in general are held to a little bit higher ethical standard. Integrity is a really important thing for me. I am a fan of working co-opetition. There is always collaboration in the deals that I do. I want to be honest with the people I'm working with. I want to be honest with the agents I'm working with. And I want to function in a way that serves the needs of everybody to the best of my ability. I know that's kind of a generic thing to say, but it is what it is. That's the meat and potatoes on me. My family and I have lived here since April of 2018, and it has been a long, wild ride, but I have to tell you, it has not ever not been worth it at any stage along the way. And I want to be honest with you, we have been in some very low spots since moving here. Whole lot of unexpected variables, but being able to raise our daughter here, where the public school system is near the top of the list in the entire state. My daughter's school is number 3 in the entire state. Our county is in the running for number 1 in the entire state. If you haven't seen any of the video, I'm gonna put a link down below, but the superintendent for schools in Walton County is one of the most enthusiastic, energetic, God-fearing, kindest men that I've ever met, and he's a lot of fun. So if you have children and you're looking into being here, it's going to be worth it just in terms of being able to send your kids for school that paid for by taxpayers. Taxpayers pay for this. Coming from New Orleans, you either go to private school or you're doomed, and that's going to cost you at least, when we were still there, like $12,000 a year for a decent education. So to be able to get it here where your taxes pay for it, not to mention the natural resources, the great restaurants, all the funky stuff that people love about 30A, the different towns and architecture, and just the branching out beyond that. I mean, right across the bridge we have Freeport, which has been the #1 growing city in the entire state of Florida. Think about that for a second. 15 minutes away, fastest growing city in the entire state of Florida. Investors paying attention. Don't just think that 30A is the only place to invest. If you're at all interested in long-term rental, that's what I want to retire on. I want to acquire a portfolio of properties. If I could, that's where I would do it right now. It's just expanding by leaps and bounds, and we're going to start seeing that trickle over into Niceville and Crestview. You're already seeing it, but I'm getting off on a tangent here. Let's jump into the actual market data for this area. So this is the most recent data for the 30A market in particular. So I'd like to emphasize, I'm actually going to pull that up live right now, what that is. Line map overlays. There we go. Okay. So if I pull this up, you can kind of see what I mean by the 30A area. So within this blue polygon that I drew into the MLS, you can see it ends down here on the east end at Inlet Beach. This is Camp Helen State Park, so there's no residential in this area. Up to 98, but not including Watersound Origins. If you're familiar with that, I do not include that in the 30A market data. And just kind of throughout, you can see 98 running this way. Here's the 331 bridge. I'm currently sitting right here. And down to the west end up to Topsail Hill. So this is just 30A West kissing 98 right here. So this is what I consider the 30A market. But looking at that data, guys, look at this. We currently have over 13 months of inventory. Over a year's worth of inventory. That is wild. Now, that being said, let's look at our list and sold data. We can see that our average list price stayed fairly consistent. It's $269. It was at $2.9 a year ago. We have had an adjustment in our market. We had to have had one. We needed one, honestly. The insane levels of appreciation gains that we saw during COVID was amazing if you own. Not so amazing if you were buying, but amazing if you own, but not sustainable. I'm sure at the surface level, homeowners would like to say, I'd like to keep that going, but you would wind up pricing yourself out and face an inevitable adjustment anyway. But what's interesting is the average sale price. So a year ago, 2.54, currently 2.47, and you can see that's kind of fluctuated there a little bit. Take this data a little bit with a grain of salt, just because we have such a wide range of priced homes along 30A. Obviously, we have like these 10-bedroom Gulf front mansions that sell in excess of $15 million. A few blocks away from a 4-bedroom house for $2 million. So it's quite a wide range. It's going to affect that pretty dramatically. But the key takeaway is that our average sale price has stayed relatively consistent. And if we do get, just for the sake of comparison, I pulled up 2022 data, and you can see we were just over 3 months of inventory. It was a madhouse. Average days on market was 44, just under 45. Now, our average days on market, 174 days. Obviously, we've seen a massive shift. Our sold to list ratio has adjusted. You can see that used to be substantially higher, especially in the peak of COVID. It's like as soon as you would list something, you had a full price offer in cash. Now we see more seller concessions, buyers getting more credits at close, that kind of thing. And you can see it here as well. Just an absolute spike. Not surprisingly, it's an election year. Interest rates. Let's talk about interest rates here for a second. I mean, I have it pulled up, but when you look historically, you go ahead and take you deduce whatever you want from this graph. But you can see for yourself here, 2021, and then just this massive spike. Interest rates have been such a huge player in how our market has changed this year. I mean, I started off this year telling people like, hey, the Fed has announced that they're going to do 3 drops this year. We were supposed to, we started out the year way up here near 7s. I mean, coming off of, the end of 23 in excess of 7%, 8%. Obviously, if you're an investor, it's going to be higher than that, but just jumbo loans, FHA, 30-year loans, I mean, coming down from nearly 8%. We started off telling people, hey, the Fed said that they're going to potentially be dropping 3 times. They wound up not only not doing that, but they actually went back up a few times. But we are finally starting to see it dip back down. I've seen local lenders send emails to me advertising FHA rates at 5.5. So we're definitely seeing, I mean, you can see they're pretty much down where they were in January of this year. And if we look at the market data, we can see that, back in January, we had a little dip in the absorption rate. We had some more buyer activity, and not surprisingly, as a result of that, in the subsequent months, we had more listings come on the market. Sellers saw that things were moving, they decided to list things, but then as interest rates started climbing back up, and just all the different variables that go into that. But as I've always said, nobody has a crystal ball when it comes to interest rates. Obviously, the Fed can't even depend on its own word because that changed as much as it did. But just kind of finishing looking through this, and we can see we currently have we actively have over $3 billion in real estate right now. That is just wild. But by all intents and purposes, this is a buyer's market. But the reason you don't see that translated in the average sale price is because of how many sellers are locked into very low interest rates. So for them to make a lateral move, they may have a ton of equity, but they're going to wind up getting it eaten up by the appreciation in interest rates in another property. So I'm sure we're going to see more of that kind of clear up as interest rates hopefully continue to trend down. And like I said, it's an election year. Take that for what it's worth. You can make your own deductions there. I'm sure you can see my shirt. Not to be so subliminal about these things, but anyway. Hopefully we'll see a shift in a positive direction there. But that being said, it's a very, very stark reminder. This is a want market, 30A specifically, not the entire South Walton area, but 30A market specifically is a want market. People don't need to buy here. I mean, a lot of investors treat these properties like piggy banks just because they're inflation proof and they're going to maintain their value to some degree. People are always going to transact in a want market. Because people want to be here. That's why I moved here. I certainly enjoy living here. So it's understandable why people would want to have a secure place, a second home, something that's going to have covered their cost of ownership. And if you are an investor, I will say that just to manage expectations right out the gate. If you're investing in 30A and you are financing, do not expect to cash flow. If you can net zero, that's amazing, but what's more likely is covering your cost of ownership and then just having a designated place where you know you can block off dates and come to. You don't have to worry about booking it or what the condition of the house is going to be. It's your place, and that is just it's an intangible value. You can't really, it's intrinsic. You can't put a number on that specifically. So that's the 30A market data. I also want to show y'all the Santa Rosa Beach and Point Washington market, because I know not everybody watching this are investors. Not everybody's looking for a giant beach mansion or something to generate revenue. They're looking to move here like we did. So I have that market data because I will say that north of 98 is an entirely different world. So let me pull up that map just so y'all can kind of see what I'm talking about here. I created all of these just so I can look at it. So here's my combined Santa Rosa Beach and Point Washington. So you can see. Okay, so that's all north of 98, so through Point Washington. This is kind of the stretch, as locals call it. There's not much out here. They are currently developing some apartments here. Here's Water Sound Origins, but all of this is just Deer Lake State Park and just dead area at the moment. So Point Washington east of 331, Santa Rosa Beach west of 331, up kind of through the west end of 30A and into Miramar Beach. I kind of cut it off right here. This is like around where the hospital is and stuff if you've been down that way, but just so you know what area I'm talking about when I pull up this data. So you can see a totally different market, just under 6.5 months of inventory. Days on market is not too dissimilar, but that's not surprising, just considering the interest rates. Pretty much anybody who's buying full-time, chances are they're financing. I know I am. So I've been inhibited as well. I feel your pain there. We can see that our average sale price is around just over $500,000, which is honestly amazing. To the fact that you can live somewhere where you can get like a brand new construction house, and not necessarily D.R. Horton, because there's plenty of that out here, but you can get a brand new house for between $500,000 and $700,000 within a 5-minute drive to multi-million dollar beach homes, and you get to enjoy the same amenities. So, just take that for what it's worth right now. If you have any questions about this, I don't want to get super in the weeds with a lot of this data, but if you have any questions about any specific area, neighborhood, market, whatever, please feel free to reach out, drop a comment below, shoot an email, and either myself or my business partner, Blaine, will be happy to speak to any of that stuff. Okay, so that's the market data. Had to change settings a little bit here simply because this is where I'm at. I am in pickup line to pick up my daughter from school, but as mentioned, this is completely paid for by taxpayers like you and me, so that my daughter can go to this amazing school. But I'm going to dip into the NAR settlement and the private beaches here as soon as I get home. Okay, back home, and now I want to dive into the NAR settlement. This is a very loaded issue with a lot of talking points, a lot of opinions, and I just want to cut away through any opinions and just get to the brass tacks of it, because if you've been following it at all, you're probably familiar with what has changed, what has not changed, and if you're not, I want to just give you the quick Cliff's Notes, essentially. So basically what this settlement has preliminary agreement to is that on the MLS, there will no longer be offers of compensation. So historically, anyone with access to an MLS system is going to be able to see on any property that's listed the offer of compensation. So typically what that looks like is if I'm listing a property, I have a listing agreement with the owner that if I close their property for them, that they're going to compensate me around 6%, 5%, somewhere in that range. That's industry standard. And I would split that with the buying agent representation. So 2.5%, 3% for each side, that's fair. What's now going to happen is that the buyer on paper is now responsible for compensating any representation for a buyer's agent. So any agent that's helping them locate, write a contract, go through negotiation, go through title, go through closing, all the little boxes that need to be checked through the process, they are now going to be responsible for compensating them. And what that's going to do is very little, honestly. What that's basically going to look like is on the listing side, sellers can now either offer that compensation as a concession or a credit at close, but there are some conditions where that's going to run into interruption with any financing, any underwriting that has a cap on seller concessions, or that's going to go to the brokerage, representing the selling side. It's going to go through that brokerage, and that brokerage is then going to offer compensation to the buyer's agent. That's more than likely going to be the industry standard over the course of time, is we're just going to have agreements, and we already have contracts provided to us through the Association of Realtors in our area that allows us to communicate that in legal writing that if you're listing a property, we are going to offer compensation to the buyer's agent, or we're going to offer a concession from the seller. It can go many different ways. The point in the bottom line is that compensation has always been negotiable. It will continue to be negotiable. All that's happening now is that on paper, buyers are now going to be responsible for compensating their agents, which to some people on the surface may be very intimidating, especially if you're a buyer. If you're not familiar with buyer representation agreements, that's now something that's going to be commonplace in Florida. Places like Tennessee and plenty of other states have that already. It's already in standing practice that any buyer's agent is going to enter into a written agreement signed by the buyer. That way they can show them property and they're protected legally for their services. So it's honestly going to be, I think in the long run, it's going to be a positive impact. It's going to be a strange change in the meantime, just because, especially if you become an agent like myself in the last few years, you became accustomed to the way they've always been doing things, and now it's going to change up. So no big deal, we adapt. And again, if you're already from one of those states where that's a commonplace thing, nothing's really changing too much for you. But if anyone has any questions, feel free to reach out. I do want to just quickly run through what we've been provided by the Florida Realtors Association. This is what any buyer that I work with or Blaine works with or any agent is going to enter into this contract. So I just want to run through it really quickly because if you're anything like me, as soon as you see a contract, you start clenching up a little bit, but it's very basic. So parties, obviously, consumer being the buyer, broker being the brokerage that is representing. So in my case, it would be Live 38 Real Estate. The term is simply how long that representation is going to last. I'm probably going to preset this as a year. That makes the most sense for me. Type of property, take that as single family home, condo, townhouse, etc. Any residential property, you can make this as vague or as specific as we like. Location, for the sake of me, I'm going to put the state of Florida because that's where I can operate. This is just a list of everything that we're responsible for as your representing brokerage, your obligations as a buyer, so the things that are expected out of you. A retainer, I don't think we're going to see too much of this. Honestly, I'm not going to charge a retainer for representation to go through the process. I never have, and I don't think I ever would. Compensation is just breaking it down as to what that looks like. So historically, we would see that on the MLS, that if there was a property listed, if it had 2.5%, 3% compensation, that's where we would understand what that looks like. Now, what that's going to look like is we're going to put that into this document. Buyer's going to sign it, and when we submit an offer, either they're going to already have communicated what the compensation looks like, or we're already going to have negotiated what the compensation looks like. The point in case is that this protects both you and us to make sure that we have this in agreement so that we can use it as a leverage point in anything that we offer. The protection period, obviously, probably just leave that as is. And I can send this to anyone that's interested. Conditional termination, this is one thing that we may incur a fee on simply if we start working with somebody and we do a whole lot of work and then they wind up doing nothing at all. This just helps cover the cost of the work that we've done. This is just an agreement to, if there are any disputes, how that would be handled through arbitration, obviously ideally over litigation. And then the ability to assign. In this case, this contract is a transaction brokerage contract, meaning that if we were able to provide the services to close a deal on both sides, that we would act in all fairness to both sides, not representing either, but representing the highest benefit of the transaction itself. There are other variations of this, whether it be single agent, no brokerage, but this is going to be industry standard. So this is what you can expect to see in Florida. And then obviously acknowledgement, sign, 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 initial, initial, initial. I'm going to include a link down below to this FAQ page. The National Association of Realtors has done a very good job of rolling out information in digestible pieces that is going to make it easier to understand. And if you have any questions, as always, I'm available. Feel free to text me, email me, whatever suits you best. All right. Let's talk about the beaches. This has been a very, very contentious topic of conversation, both for locals and for tourists alike, but we now no longer have customary use. If you're not familiar with what customary use is, it is what we have always had along the beaches of South Walton, which is that the beaches are for everybody. No one can claim stake to the beaches up to a certain point. So what typically you would see on the Gulf front owner's perspective is your property line would extend out to a certain extent in the sand, called the mean water line. That no longer now applies. They now claim ownership out to the beach with a transitory zone so that people can pass but cannot stop. You cannot stop and sit. You can pass through, but you cannot set up shop, and they're going to let you know. So if you have been here this year, you've probably experienced this firsthand at some point. If you have not been within the last year, it is going to be a little bit of a surprise to you, but it's going to be interesting how it plays out. I don't want to render too much of my own opinion simply because I think most people by and large probably share the same opinion. But there is a map, and I'm going to provide a link to that below, that is going to show you all the different places where private beaches, public beaches, state park beaches, etc., are along the coast of 30A. So obviously you can see 30A starts here, coming from Destin, coming down all the way to Inlet Beach. So here's Lake Powell coming into PCB. Here's Rosemary right here. So you can see there's a whole lot of red on here, which means, according to the key, Vacation Rental Managed Private Beach. Green, dark green here is State Park. We've got our regional beach accesses and county-owned beaches. So you can see, and you can get pretty granular here, but some of our more popular beach accesses have definitely felt the sting of this. If you've been here recently, you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't, you'll find out soon enough, I'm sure. But just for example, here's Blue Mountain. Very, very common, very popular. And you can see that it is now this only skinny little strip that is county vendor managed. So that just simply means public beach. Bordering it is owner managed private beach or the resort vacation rental managed private beach. So you'll have experienced that if you come out. Another popular one is here at the end of 393, Ed Walleen. A lot of people know that one. Same thing. You're gonna see signs here saying that you can't set up shop, and it's a strange sight to see. In all honesty, as a local, having been here for 6 years now, I'm accustomed to what public beaches look like and have always looked like. And to walk out on these beach accesses and you see just everyone concentrated in this little square. Meanwhile, there's stretches of empty beach with empty vendor chairs and umbrellas. It's odd, but it is what it is. It's been put into practice. I'm sure that there's going to be some level of resistance to that. Certainly, at least emotionally, there is for me right now. But in terms of real estate, there's going to be some level of repercussion to this. I mean, obviously, in places where people have spent in excess of $1 million to be within walking distance of a beach that was customarily public. For example, Seagrove. Seagrove is a really good example. We'll scoot down here. So here's Seagrove Beach. If you're familiar with Seagrove Beach, you know that there's a lot of little tucked up accesses. Well, now a lot of those tucked up public accesses are resigned strictly to that space, that narrow space. And now it has private beach ownership on either side. So you're going to see people not wanting to spend money to stay in these homes that are being used as vacation rentals. You're going to see rental numbers decline, which is going to obviously impact the value of a home if they want to sell it. So we're going to see some interesting changes and see what that kind of trickle-down economics is going to do for the local businesses as less people come to vacation along the beaches of 30A as they become more privatized. State parks are a great bet in terms of if you're still looking to be here, which I definitely believe is worth doing. But you're going to see the concentration of locations that are of interest change. So places like Seaside and Watercolor or Rosemary Beach or Alice Beach, places that are large population, large development that have private ownership of the beach, they're not going to see too much of a change. You're going to see it more in the isolated communities. I use Seagrove as an example because there's a lot of that, a lot of little isolated communities that maybe have HOA access to a deeded beach and share that access with maybe the condos south of 30A. And now you're seeing all of that population being concentrated into a small space. That's where you're going to see the impacts. Your good bets are going to be places that border state parks. So Inlet Beach especially. Inlet Beach has always been a favorite of mine. It's like the last little bastion of East 30A with access. I mean, you're within 5 to 10 minutes of Alice Beach, Rosemary Beach, Watersound Origins, but you're off of 30A, and there's often not an HOA, and you're very close to a state park, so the beach access is great. I think Inlet Beach, places like that are going to see a lot of benefit from this change for the time being. Simply because you're not bordered by private beach, you're not going to be impeded on by private beach. So you can walk out of that regional access owned by the county, and since you have the state park as a neighbor, you don't have to worry about being chased away or fussed at or yada yada. I'm curious to see what comes of it. If anyone has any questions, as always, feel free to reach out. If I don't have an answer, I assure you that as soon as I do have it, that I will share it with you. But that's where we're at right now. It's an interesting time. I will say this, though, as a local, I have not had trouble going to the beach yet. That being said, I live towards the east end. I use Inlet Beach public access to get out there, and I haven't had any issues yet. And I do believe like places like Deer Lake are a great option. Grayton Beach State Park is always a great option. Fortunately, we have so many great state parks where we do have great beach accesses. Some of them are a little bit easier to get to than others. I'm happy to send you a list if you have any questions about that. But just as a local testimonial, it has not impeded my ability to go yet. As far as owning along 30A, obviously a different story. So we'll see how it pans out, but that's everything I have for you. And this has been a very long video with a lot of information, but I have to get this stuff off my mind. I have to get it off my chest. And I just want to make it available to anyone who's interested, anyone who just wants clarity on what it truly looks like to be here, whether it's as a part-time owner, full-time resident, you name it. I'm happy to answer any questions about it. So that being said, hope all of you have a phenomenal day. God bless you, and hope to hear from any of you that have any questions soon. Take care.